Myanmar has been embroiled in armed conflict since 1948, when the country, then known as Burma, gained independence from the United Kingdom. Since then, the country has experienced decades of civil unrest and repressive military rule. In 1988, a student-led uprising saw hundreds of thousands of people, including monks and children, protest against the military government. These mass protests, which were mostly concentrated in the ethnic minority states, largely organized by university students. Uso took part in that civil disobedience movement. He was in high school at the time.
Many of my friends died in front of me, and then died from the fighting or died from the malaria in about 40 days period. We estimated more than 10,000 people died.
Soon after, the activists had to flee to Thailand to evade arrest and persecution by the military.
About midnight, about 2-3 guys came, knocked the door, and then they said, "Oh, please follow us." And then sometimes they just disappear. Yeah, they never return.
So's been advocating for better democratic rights in Myanmar ever since. And while violence has always simmered in the country, the fighting escalated in 2021 after the Myanmar military regime overthrew the democratically elected government. The army's takeover sparking the formation of rebel groups and pro-democracy militias. Experts say fighting has spiraled across much of the country, including in areas which had rarely seen conflict in previous decades. It's left a veritable patchwork of different military groups controlling parts of the country.
Since then, many people follow the protest, the civil disobedience movement, but the military cracked down and they committed widespread violence, including killings, arrests, and torture. So that pushed many people, thousands of civilians, students, and activists to take up arms, which lead to a nationwide armed resistance.
A 2024 report by the United Nations found the military's violence against civilians last year reached unprecedented levels. The UN says across Myanmar, nearly 20 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance, and more than 3.5 million people have been displaced, a third of whom are children. Ung Tin's sister is among the millions of people displaced by the conflict. He says she's been hiding at a makeshift camp in the jungle for nearly a year.
That area is not even secure. Everybody can come and get it, even the military.
He does what he can to help his family and others back home. Once a month, Tin and others from Vancouver's small Burmese community spend hours cooking and packaging hundreds of traditional meals to sell here in the Lower Mainland. Money raised goes to buy supplies for those who are displaced through NGOs.
There's no medication at all because of older people, very young people, little child. So they need a lot of support for the medication and then food and shelter.
And so I've always been reluctant to share my heritage. Then as I grew older, I realized I shouldn't have been ashamed.
Mi-Lin Kim's parents fled Myanmar's Chin state. She says empowering and educating Chin youth through cultural preservation is paramount.
In 2021, when the coup took over, a lot of us didn't know how to react, whereas our parents were deeply affected by it because they have gone through this already back in '88. And so in our generation, we knew we needed to do something about it.
Through her work with the Chin Youth Organization of North America, the 25-year-old UBC student has already met with policymakers in Ottawa and recently visited refugee camps in neighboring countries like India.
We heard all sorts of stories that were really heartbreaking, stories where they had people die on their way to refuge. We had stories where when the fire broke, the Burmese SAC, when they burnt down Thantlang, and all homes were on fire, stories where I couldn't bring anything with me. I only bought a blanket for me because we thought we would return back home.
4 years later, analysts say the Myanmar military regime is starting to lose control of vast areas of the country, with resistant forces making major territorial gains. An election is set for this fall, but some experts say the future of the country remains uncertain.
The election that proposed by junta will definitely not be free and fair.
These advocates say as the civil war rages on, more funding is needed for aid and protections against gender-based violence, including greater sanctions and support for young activists to continue their education in Canada. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.